Yeah, firstly, thank you to Lokesh and Chin for the presentations. I thought they were very insightful. Just want to comment on Lokesh. I think that's a non-technical presentation, and it's good that and it's good that the developers get to hear the other side of the business, right? Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. It's wrong. I mean, a lot of the push from regulators, right, is to go digital, right? No doubt about that. That's a good thing, right? So, I just want to say a few things. So the push is from regulators, and that's a good thing, right? But sometimes, as business owners or CEOs, we have to really decide, how much to push, because everything comes at a cost, right? You have to answer to your shareholders who says, hey, why am I not getting a dividend? Why am I not seeing profits? Why am I not seeing revenue? Oh no, we're investing everything into digital. We're looking at the next 5 to 10 years. No, the next 5 to 10 years, so many things that could possibly happen. So it is the pace that we go at, and I totally agree with Lokesh, things start small, right? But I just want to just mention a few points that you made about how, cheaper, easier, faster, right? These are very important parameters, and that's really the holy grail. Even whatever the matrix that you put on top, about 3%, those are not good enough. What people want is liquidity at a particular point in time, anytime, anywhere, and for it to be settled. And that's something that we really need to hold on to and see how we can do better in that stage. Of course, people have come out with new technology like blockchain in order to speed up that process, right? But still, at the end of the day, the cost of funds is also very important. And moving away from the banking SWIFT network, right? I think that's also important. And just to beat our own drum for just a brief minute, is that what we are trying to create at OnePay is not just being a digital remittance player. We're trying to create a community, a marketplace where partners like MSBs can come to our platform and not just pass business to us for us to process, but also to be able to seek business on our platform. Because there will be other MSBs there that may say, okay, I'm not good at this particular corridor. I have this currency pair business, right? Is there anyone who's interested in this particular business? So there is a bidding process, right? That is our holy grail. That's our ultimate aim, right? You talked about dividing the business up into just this holy grail matrix, right? Cheaper, easier, faster. But at the end, you made a remark that it's important that we differentiate customers. And I think the current MSB industry, especially in Malaysia, is pretty much just remittance for foreign workers, right? So high frequency, low value transactions, right? And as you go, there are many parts to it. Either you have high frequency, high value transactions, right? Or much lower frequency, high value transactions. The amount of checks that's needed in terms of our KYC, not our transaction monitoring, is totally different. The risk, proposition is totally different, right? One where a few hundred ringgit or a few thousand ringgit versus tens of thousand ringgit or even hundreds of thousand ringgit, right? So I think that is also very important. The features that's available to the customer, right? For example, a corporate would at the very least expect a maker-checker process where someone in the finance department makes the transaction and then the small business owner approves the transaction, right? When we first started in Malaysia, we called about 1,000 SMEs, and we only focus on the SME industry as well as partners. And most SMEs, the feedback is, I never knew we could do it via the MSBs, right? We can only do it via the banks, right? So there is an education process. The other thing is the digital agent. What do you call it? Digital agent. There are many ways of calling it. Yeah, but I think that is the growth area where if we are ready, then we can take advantage of this. And that's something that Vincent and his team is looking at, in trying to enhance this channel. Right? So I just want to add my comments to it. I don't think there's a question in there. but certainly for those business owners as well as the CEOs of the room, I think cost of digitalization is really the front end of everything. And digitalization is not going to, it's going to improve a lot of things. That's why we always when they say we are a fintech, I say we are a financial enabled, technology enabled financial institution. Right? You must have the business, because the digitalization is not going to give you the business. The digitalization is going to enable the business. Right? It's going to enable the business to have scalability. That's the most important thing. Right? One can be a very profitable one-shop business. Right? You have your customers, and credibility is such a difficult thing to really replace. They've been working with you, buying foreign currencies for you for many years. That's very difficult to replace. With an app or another, it doesn't really matter. Right?
I think relationship is the key.
Yeah.
The word is the relationship.
Yeah.
That's very important.
So that's important. So how we can continue to have that relationship on the platform, right? My other thing is for Chin, really is a question now. It's somewhat related in that you have, we understand that we need API in order to integrate with, just for example, other MSPs, right? With e-commerce platforms in order to transact cross-border money transfers. Now, we know that with our APIs, there's this vulnerability for risk, right? Being attacked, and certainly I totally agree with that. However, again, from a business owner / CEO perspective, then, is there, a way of, you have your five things that we have to consider, right? Discovery, testing, and so on and so forth. I was listening. And then, so the thing is, how do we decide what is the appropriate level of this sort of testing that we should do? We don't, you mentioned that developers are not concerned about API security. I know it's, both partly true and also tongue-in-cheek. But the thing is, owners are interested in how much or this is stakeholders, right? Important stakeholders are interested in how much should I invest in this? Is it going to be an overkill at the very start? Because the journey is that as a startup or even a new player into the digital space, you start small, right? As Lokesh has advised, correctly advised, right? And then, but you don't want to be, pen testing, API discovery, and so on and so forth. For there's no end to it, right? And so how do you? Maybe is there some sort of rule of thumb where we can somehow increase the investment in this over time? Of course, we are not Optus. We're certainly not the 5 million case, So, but we do have records which, if at the very least, reputational risk, right? Being fined by BNM, for example, and so on and so forth. Those are reputational risks which will take a long time to even recover. So, but we understand the risk. We know we have to do something. But if I listen to my IT team, yeah, it's a it's a heavyweight solution, right? And then I said no, let's not do this because it's too expensive, for the level of business that we have. So what sort of and this is the question, what sort of how do we decide, and what is the level of monitoring do we need?
I think very valid question. For any startup, the barrier of entry to the business has to be low enough for you to make sense, right? For you to invest into the technology and to make money out of it. At the end of the day, it needs to be profitable. And that's precisely also how we've made the technology such that it's easy to consume, and it doesn't cost you a bomb to before you even get started, you're already like in the negative. We built into a SaaS service. Basically, a SaaS service means that when you become part of the platform of this SaaS, you already enjoy a lot of services like testing is part of it. When I say testing, I mean it's like outside in kind of reconnaissance testing. So by doing so, right, you are already enjoying the key benefits, the five that you listed just now, without having to incrementally add on when you just getting started. So what that means is this: when you get started, it's a low barrier, but if you are successful, meaning your traffic through, right, number of APIs you're getting is just exponentially growing, then yes, then it means then you need to pop up in terms of the utilization of the SaaS service. Now, that's fully in line with how I think you're accustomed to public cloud, the entry to public cloud is very low, right? But as you get more successful, you pay more CPU more CPUs because more successful transactions, right? A higher number of transactions. It's the same model. So I think it's important. I think for to engage and to understand our pricing, how we make you successful, so we can be successful as well. So it's a win-win situation. Yeah. But we're more than happy to share how our pricing works, so that it doesn't become a barrier for you. But it's very important for you to be successful.
Any more questions from?
Good morning. I would like to address this question to Mr. Vincent and Felix. Well, basically, we have been using the banks to send funding settlement. So my question is simple. Why do you think we should try one bit as an alternative way of, funding settlement, because we are involved in remittance where there's a lot of cross-border payment, So basically, if you can enlighten us on why we should consider one bit as an alternative to banking settlement. Thank you.
I'll take some benefits from you and the others if I don't complete everything. So for one bit, we are not new in business. Okay, so in Malaysia, we seem to be new only like 2 years plus. We got a license. We've been around for about a decade or so already. And primarily overseas in Hong Kong and Singapore, we've been doing a lot of business with MSBs. And the company prides itself overseas as the MSBs for the MSBs. Okay, now, cost of business for funding in one bit is quite straightforward. End of the day, we talk about cost. Okay, cost in a bank is not just a remittance. When you price a trade in a particular corridor, you talk about, you have to incur into it the cost of salary, payroll, rental, and a bunch of things also. So for the cost of funds for one pip to be competitive to all of the partners, our cost of doing business also got to be reasonable. As MSB, we are not as large as a bank, so the cost of expenditure, the cost of this and that is not high. Therefore, the benefits can be passed on to most of our partners around the world. So therefore, cost of funds usually plus everything added inside is actually very competitive in one way. The other way also, we work with a lot of partners and corporate customers that we provide zero fees for when you do outgoing payment. That's one of the ways we also remain competitive. Now, like any other, you're not the first one that asks us why must we do business with one pay. In fact, our corporate customers also ask us why must we do business with one pay. Quite interestingly, in the corporate world in Malaysia, many of them think that bank, I think you will face this also, some corporate customers say, hey, I only know banks, I don't know about MSB doing corporate remittance. Simply put it there, they only think their foreign workers need MSB to do remittance. Okay, it's a matter of perception also. So when we explain to them, look, we've been doing this not from day one. For the past decade or so, we've been doing for corporate, we had the MSB for MSB over the years. They finally get the picture of how we do business. Again, the cost of operation, because we managed to keep it pretty well controlled, that we can offer really good corporate rates to other players like in Malaysia, HME Remit, GKLU also, we offer them rates and we'll show them the rates, Madam C and so forth also. Now, Felix, you want to add on to what I...
Thank you for the question, but put us on the spot, right? I mean, it's not meant to be sort of a one pip advertisement. But I think I'll turn the tables around and ask, what are your pain points? What is HME Remits pain points, right? You don't have to answer it. We can find the time to really discuss this. But what are the pain points? Previously from Class C to Class A, what are the pain points? Is it just a case of now we can do remittance, let's have, or even with money changing, let's have an app, let's have this or that. I think we can discuss all those whether or not we, how we can collaborate. It's not just about passing business to us, and I mentioned the community, the marketplace, online community, how we can potentially collaborate. We can also understand your strengths, and then how we can exchange business through HME Remit or any other partners. We can, are you also looking into corporate business, dealing with SMEs? I'm sure you have a lot, you will probably know a lot of SME owners who may want to shift away from the banks through and pass business cheaper, easier, faster through the remittance channels, especially in the region, beyond the very competitive, cutthroat business of remittance for foreign workers. I think it's a case of understanding our partner needs and then coming up with a solution. Unfortunately, that may not be the answer they are looking for, but I think it is a discussion. We can't just go in and say we are cheaper, easier, faster, pass us the money, we pass it to another bank, we're going to, because we have large more liquidity. I don't think we can say that in Malaysia, but certainly in the region, we do have some liquidity, and so that certainly is a benefit of using our services. But for example, if you lack, we can always talk about how we can, our first and second generation apps, or even or co-branding, or white labeling apps for you. I don't know. These are things that potentially, but just taking on the corporate business, transaction monitoring for the corporate business is not straightforward, because you are dealing with a legal entity. Legal entity has got many individual players in there, right? Everything checks out at onboarding, right? But what happens in transaction monitoring? How do you know the invoice is real, and so forth, right? For individuals, for remittance, let's say for example, foreign workers, it's 1,000 ringgit or whatever, 2,000 ringgit. I'm not quite sure, right? So around that region, what is the risk? The risk is relatively minimal. But when you're dealing with 20,000, 30,000 ringgit, right? Are you sure you have the right processes, the right checks in order to process those transactions? So those are things that we are open to sharing with our partners, and hopefully that will be the value add that we bring to our business partnership. I hope we can have a separate conversation about this.
Any more questions for all speakers?
Okay, I can have this question. I would like to ask Mr. Loke, before so RMA give solutions to businesses in terms of competition. I would like to understand RMA competition as well in terms of service provider. So you compete, you have a lot of competition as well, right? So what makes you stand out? And then in terms of how RMA can move, because just now you said about non-SWIFT. So how can you go further and compete with non-SWIFT, to make it non-SWIFT? Because I know internationally you have to go to SWIFT as well. So let's look into how you can compete with the other service provider here or system provider in terms of remittance, and how you can go international in terms of going non-SWIFT.
I think there are two questions over here. So first question is, you're saying that, okay, from the RMA perspective, so when I talk about competition, yes, definitely, we are living in a competitive world, so we do have a competition, we do have players which are from overseas, possibly locally as well, who are a system provider. I think the catch over here is how well we know the clients. Same thing goes for us, because we have been serving the MSP players. We understand that what they're looking for. They're not only looking for system, but they're also looking for people with the knowledge. They're also looking for people who can provide the support, and again, we are locally available. So we have actually come across, within this past, we started our journey in 2010 actually. If you, I can say it openly as well. If you ask me, the first product which RMA developed was eRemit. If all of you are familiar with eRemit.com.my, it was developed by RMA. Okay, so that was the first product we launched. Of course, so after this we were not so silent in the market. So then only during the COVID time, we started progressing in the area of commitment. So what I'm trying to say is we have gone through the journey with many of the players where we understood what they're looking for. One of the main things is they need a lot of hand-holding. Because as you say, right, because they are MSP players like this now, you also mentioned, right? They need to know when you're performing a transaction, whether it's for peer-to-peer or B2B, what kind of checkpoints has to be developed, what kind of processes has to be there. So our team, with my co-founder Chubi, right, we're all very much well-versed with all the BNM requirements, the local regulation, and also the local industry requirements as well. And that's where the comfort level comes in. So that's how basically when it comes to the competition, of course we will not win all the deals, but I think majority, when we bring this so-called synergy or we bring this value to our clients, they like it. And that's where we normally get the chance to work with all our customers as well over here. And I'm happy to say that some of them are all over here as well, and thanks for giving RMA an opportunity to serve them as well. So that's basically coming from the competition point of view. Now, let's say we talk about from the transaction going from, basically we're talking about international, whether we're talking about SWIFT and all. Actually, we have integrated SWIFT as well. But I think most of the players locally, they prefer not SWIFT. Because that's where the catch is. Because first of all, I think MSP point of view, I'm not sure whether SWIFT allows any of them is working with the SWIFT. Most of them, none of them I haven't heard of it so far in Malaysia market. But we're working with banks as well, where we have integrated the SWIFT platform also, where we perform SWIFT reconciliation and all. So it's all about a matter of choice. See, we do provide information to all our clients who are the payout partners available. We have connected with almost 25 right now, not only with, we talk about new money match, what they call your MoneyGram, your Tunes, you name it, TerraPay, so we already integrated. So the idea is, it's all about the clients, which one they're comfortable with, who is giving them a best rate or who's giving them a liquidity. Now, as you mentioned about liquidity as well, it's all about settlement. Whether settlement is based on pre-funding or post-funding. Most of them, they want to go for post-funding. Because in that case, they don't do pre-fund the fund, they can perform a transaction. And I don't want to name it, I know some of them, they're enjoying the post-funding for T+3. Means they can do settlement on T+3 as well. So these are the advantages, or these are basically their own choices. But we don't come and say, no, you have to work with this partner. We only provide a platform. We are agnostic, But we do recommend, if they ask us, okay, who are the players or who are the payout partners available, we can tell. For example, somebody wants to work, they want to have direct connection in Indonesia, it could be BNI, it could be BRI, So we just tell them. Rest is their choice. So we don't come and say, no, you should work only with this payout partners. Did I answer your question?
Software engineer or developer?
So we have a own development team, all in-house, nothing outsourced,
I understand that, but they come and goes, right?
Oh, okay.
You started a project and then somehow 1 million and then you have to start all over again, takes back 5 years behind, and then you have to, how do you manage that?
So in that case, I will thank to my another co-founder, Chubi, because she is able to manage him very well. Okay, we don't have that kind of high turnover in our office. That's good.
That's very good.
That's the main thing.
For the stakeholders.
Yes. So basically, the idea is we have been managing our team very well, because we understand, the cost of living, everything is increasing for everyone. So we take care of our team as much as possible. And of course, we give them an environment which is more flexible.
Yeah, I understand in terms of human capital, but
Right.
in terms of the project itself, if one programmer leaves and then you have to restart all the project again, or how do you do
We do have a backup schedule. Like for example, not a single person is managing the entire project. So we do have definitely a team. So we have a buddy system in our office where actually everybody will have a shadow buddy. So if something happens to the person who is supposed to do the thing, it can happen. Not only they give me a
You
laptop.
assign the programmers to one company and then you develop the products there. And then
Correct. So, but it's basically within our in-house. It's all in-house. Nothing is outsourced. So the concept of support buddy is because in case something happens, maybe because of personal reason, maybe he's not available, he has to go on leave or whatever. So the other buddy will take over the whole job. So we don't create dependency.
Okay.
But of course, somewhat will be there for sure. We can't run away from it, but at least so far is working for us.
So may I have one question for Mr. Lim? So any advice to give our young developers out there on how to maintain compliance with regulatory requirements when managing API security?
All right. So if you are, starting out, you're doing development. Usually, I guess the mindset of a developer would typically be, okay, if I need to build a functionality, what are the existing APIs that are available? That's probably the first question to ask, right? if these APIs are available, then I'll make use of them, right? And I'll put into my code so that I don't have to build from scratch. Or I may go to the web and look for code and copy and paste in, yeah. And that's fine. From a functionality standpoint, that is like time to market, right? You basically use utilities that are already available. But in those two situations, using a third-party APIs or using somebody else's code can lead to vulnerabilities. So let me give an example, yeah. Let's say you're using a third-party API from any provider. It could be a Grab API, for example. Let's say Grab is providing an API where you make a call. Now, Grab is pretty big, but what if Grab is compromised? Okay, and now the API that you're making a call to is returning you some data, and you don't check the data because you're a developer, right? You know that you're expecting a certain set of data. You will use it. Maybe you store it somewhere. But what if the API call returns malicious script and you didn't check? All right, and you didn't check, and you store that script into your server, and this script now is running inside your server. Okay, so that's, this particular attack pattern has now made it the top 10 of API attacks. So that's number one, right? The fact that you're using a third-party API that may not be safe in doing so. The second one is regarding copy code. It's very easy to copy code. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's also how attackers get in, by supplying you JavaScript or code that are easily available, maybe to do credit card checking. There's a utility called credit card scheming. Basically, what it means is that you take this piece of code that's supposed to be proven, right, to do credit card checking. You take that code and put it into your website and do credit card checking. But within that code, it also makes out-of-band calls to the attacker to send the credit card number to the attacker. So that script is already incorporated into that credit card JavaScript that you are copying. Yeah. So this is called supply chain attack. Yeah. Now, I know this, these two use cases in itself is already kind of daunting, right, for a developer to even think about developing a code. Before you even get to write the code, you already have to think about all these things. But I think it's important to have a check and balance. Well, we want the developers to focus on building code and getting to market fast. There is a way for you to kind of address these two issues through a SaaS service, so that you don't have to do these things for every piece of code that you write, and that relieves you the time to go do that research and rely on a service that's proven to help you with these two cases. So hopefully that gives you a flavor of how we could help from an API security standpoint.
Thank you. I think there are some questions.
I have a question for both. It's interrelated actually. From business development perspective, right? Digitalization, yes, it is very, very important. As Mr. Lokesh mentioned, it's a continuous process, It never stops in a point, right? But you see, when we want to look at going digitalization, I agree with Mr. Felix, it's about cost, right? So that's why we have options available, like he's a developer and some other white label, which already ready with API, right? So here the consensus is with cost, one with already ready API. However, I agree with Mr. Chen where security measurement need to be answered also. How do we decide? Because we want to go digitalization, but looking at these factors, right? How do we decide it at one point? Is it going with the developed by our developer with higher costing, maybe with API ready with lesser costing, but how do we ensure that this API is being secured? Yeah, so it's like interrelated.
London? Okay.
You want to take this? Then
Okay. So I think the question over here is you're talking about two different, let's say, apps over here. So one is maybe coming from the incumbent developer, okay, means who is your existing developer who has got an app over there. Secondly, there's an app available in the market with the APIs. You know? So the idea is whether you want to use that white level so-called app with the API to integrate with your core platform. Okay, and second is of course you have incumbent so-called your vendor who already have an app over there. Of course, you know, a little bit selfish or maybe from a self-interest point of view. Of course, the good option or the better option will be is to go with the incumbent vendor. The idea is because the incumbent vendor will have a good understanding of the entire API, the process, and also there are a lot of checks to be built in. It's not only about capturing the transaction, but also is to go into all the compliance checks, all kind of transaction flagging, you know, and again what kind of approval process you may have. If you're using a third-party app, you know, with the API, you may have some challenges there, you know. But again, it's not nothing called right or wrong. But again, it's again a business decision as well. In case if you find the app from the external provider is cheaper, you know, and you think it makes sense, then definitely yes, you know. So there is no right or wrong. It all depends upon the comfort level because now the way things is if you have multiple system provider, then down the line when you're making any change, the change management also could be a challenge. You know? So those are some of the plus and minus to come into the picture. You know? But again, of course, from a business point of view, I think cost is very important. If you think the other provider can give you at a cheaper cost, and again, you think they can meet all your so-called checklist point of view, what are the checks you want to build in and what kind of violation that you perform, if it is there, then it makes sense to go for wherever is the business sense. So that's all I can say from the app point of view. If you're talking about security point of view, I think both of us, like whether it's an incumbent vendor or it's a third party, end of the day we all need, okay, fine. One option is we can go to F5, second is pen test anyway is mandatory. You know? So from that perspective it's the same. I don't see much change over there because you can't compromise on security whether it's incumbent or third party. That's my thing. Yeah.
I think very good point. If you look at PCI DSS compliance, it's pretty clear that you need to do testing. You need to implement, you know, API security or WAF security. It's not like it's an option to be compliant. Yeah. And whether the APIs you're calling are inbuilt in-house or it's third-party APIs that are available for you to use or from a service provider. It is still incumbent on yourself to provide, due diligence check, to be compliant, right? Whether it's PCI or regulatory. And that being able to comply will probably mean you need to do certain tasks. It could be a one-off DA test, or it could be a continuous check so that you're always updated. Right, you're always on top of the situation. But I think it's incumbent, I guess, for you to be on top of it and be aware and show that you are diligently addressing it. I think one of the, as I shared earlier in the talk, the Cybersecurity Act in Singapore, and I heard recently in the US, it's already been enacted. This is not scare tactic or anything like that. I just want to be upfront in terms of what's happening in the world, right? The Cybersecurity Act is such that you need to prove that you have done the due diligence. I mean, this is obviously after the fact that a data breach has occurred. Yeah. After data breach has occurred, when go through the process, investigation will go through and say, okay, did I do the necessary scope to make sure that I was protected, and that becomes the decision in terms of what sort of penalty will be imposed on you. It's just a reality, unfortunately, in this world.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So we talk about a lot of preparation before the API goes in. From your experience, let's just there are a couple of bosses here, something did happen, something did get compromised. What happens after that? How do we slow it down so that things get back into normal, I mean, you've seen probably enough cases. I mean, usually they talk about the back, but behind the scene, they say, well, some always get compromised, man. What's going to happen,
Especially on the
You get back
data,
to normal state of,
the data
Yeah.
of the customer.
how do I know someone not inject? I clean back a Trojan horse, things inside. What do you see from your?
Yeah, so cybersecurity unfortunately is a 1 or 0. If you are compromised, you are compromised. The data breach may already been occurred, which means that your customer data could be traded in a dark web, where for example, Malaysian IC can be traded for a certain price. Every Malaysian IC has a price tag to it. It belongs to this person, it has this small number. All these are basically PII data that are traded. Whether we like it or not, it's being traded globally. Now, the idea is to prevent the first attack from being successful. And most customers actually start to understand this. You just have to make yourself a bit more difficult to be compromised than the next guy. Okay, so attackers are pretty, they're pretty cost conscious as well, right? In that they'll go for the lowest hanging fruit. If they try, to attack a particular site, it takes a while to break through. They'll say, oh, geez, maybe I'll go to the next site that's easier, right? So sometimes you just don't have to be a little bit faster than the next guy, so that you don't get breached. Yeah, and that could be simply just turning on some basic services, from security standpoint. But the other attack is where the persistent attack is where they plant the malware inside your infrastructure and they wait for the opportunity to do a heavier or more thorough data exfiltration. Now that typically happens in a large enterprise where there's a lot more data to be salvaged from. If you think about it from the attacker standpoint, and maybe for smaller organizations that may not be the motive for the attacker. For small organizations, just to take whatever they can at any point in time.
I just want to add to what Suresh just said. I think, and also maybe answer part of, add to what I said, my reply to Manaji. I think cost is one aspect, right? Then it's not just, we need to understand what are we good at? Are we good at the branding? Are we good at do we have distribution? Do we have a customer base? Are those important to us? How much of that do I want to retain? And then you decide whether or not you want to have whether you buy it from an incumbent or from off the shelf. At the end of the day, you own the thing, right? You still have to manage the future development. You have to manage the security aspect of it. So do you want to own the manufacturing? Okay, so let's make it very simple. The distribution, which is the front facing, I am ABC, remit, this is what I am, so that's important to me. Do I want to expand overseas? Do I want to have more customers? Do I have a customer base? Are they tech savvy enough that they have an app where it could be a white label app but with already a service provider rather than a pure white label app? You see what I mean? Just simply giving you the app itself. That you still have to go and manage it. You still have an IT department and so forth. So if you have a white label app where it's a service provider, then I think then the decision comes a bit easier, right? Because the manufacturing is not so important. The manufacturing of the product, of the service that you exchange, you send out, and so on and so forth, sourcing and so on and so forth. Those are, as Lokesh mentioned, are also very important, very difficult things. So that will then determine how much of that technology do you want to own, right? So if resources are always limited, right? Funding is always limited. So we have to make difficult decisions, whether it's this or that. We cannot do everything. So when a regulator push for for us to be more digital, going digital, being digital and all that, it's a difficult decision. Can you imagine all 100 odd MSP having their own apps? Yeah, even if you bought it all from Lukesh, which I hope you do, right? Then everyone has to maintain 100 odd, right? Then, so it's just not possible, right? So the service, maybe, talking to a service provider like us, apart from the, I pass you business, you give me a good rate, and then we send it out. No, that's just a very basic conversation, right? Can we have a deeper partnership in that we provide other services, compliance as a service, remittance as a service, and so on and so forth. But you retain your branding, you retain your distribution, you retain your customer base, right? So that is also what we're trying to do with the Class C licensees, where they don't have a remittance license. If they're not upgraded to a Class A, then we potentially could do a referral partnership sort of business where their customers are referred to us, and then we share in the manufacturing revenue, right? So that also be a possibility, right? I cannot imagine that all MSPs will be able to have the whole thing, right? Because we are experiencing ourselves. We were very small before. We are slightly bigger than a few years back, but it is tough, convincing our shareholders, convincing future investors that to continue to invest technology, because it's a bottomless pit, right? You just keep throwing money at it, and you expect that in future the revenue will come back. So I totally agree with what Lukesh was saying about collaboration. And collaboration is not, oh, you have an app, okay, let me, buy it from you, or even as an app as a service, or however you want to price that product. It is, how deep is that collaboration, right? Do we dare to go that one step further and say, okay, I'm very confident of my brand, I'm confident of my distribution, confident of my customers, the manufacturing, I will negotiate with you how much I'm going to retain. At the end of the day, because, and we talk about, having a swiftless sort of network, it is near impossible, okay? Because at the end of the day, even if you have, firstly, in order to have a swiftless network, you either have your own network, that's one, it's very expensive, takes time. Two, you have partnerships, how partnerships go, today friends, tomorrow not friends. Or even with the partnerships, you still have to settle whether pre-funding or post-funding. You still have to use the Swift network. So the only way is your own network, right? And or you do a offset transaction with your customers. So money coming from Indonesia, money going into Indonesia, for example, then you do the offset, we balance off, and then we do the left, the remaining balance could be, for another day or something, right? So really to reach that level, I don't know. Of course, blockchain is another one, right? Cryptocurrency now is a dirty word, but actually the idea of blockchain technology, at least tokenization, it's a very valid idea. And that's something that regulators are slowly coming to realize, despite all the bad news, right? So I think that is very important. That is something, but that is really a step too far. So you need to start with digitalization, and then partnership. I think a conference like this, it's not just about learning. It's about networking, about gaining trust, trying to impress on each other. What we can or cannot do, and with that credibility, you then put it online. You then try to collaborate in various ways. So answer Suresh and Prakash.
No, I think end of the day we cannot escape digitalization because e-invoicing coming soon, right?
Not only invoicing, if you talk about the compliance point of view, if you go into the West, right, there's another thing come up, like just now I mentioned about cybersecurity and all, right, where actually the regulators can penalize you if you don't put the security in place. Now there's another thing coming up, when you're performing a transaction, if you don't validate if the pay is a correct pay or not, you can be also be charged for it. So right now in Malaysia we say no, it's a customer fault, we did not give the right account number. But in the West now it's very clear, no, it's not customer fault. You are the service provider, you need to take the hit. So there's a new thing which is coming up very soon in this part of the world as well, where you need to even validate before you initiate a transaction, whether a transaction is going to the right way or not. It's not even on the onus is no more on the customer anymore. It's actually on the payment service provider. So a lot of the new things coming up, which actually definitely is a part of compliance. So not only the e-invoicing, so e-invoicing is another one as well, which we are talking about it from the business point of view. So these are all part and parcel of the job or the business actually.
Well, the traditional model has always been one-stop solution. Everything is done in that licensing, right? The distribution as well as the manufacturing. Of course, distribution, branding, marketing, everything, and getting customers. The manufacturing, getting a bank account, getting partnerships, and so on and so forth. Everything is done in one location. It's not sustainable anymore. It's just not sustainable. So it needs to be broken up, right? And collaboration, right? That's the only way. Either that or you reinvent the wheel again. Another one. Everything together, right? And then no one's going to come with a one-stop solution. The only one-stop solution that we have is just a shell, which is the platform and technology. But you still need to have your partnerships. You still need to have, the pricing and everything. Everything goes in it. All the other stuff, right? So.
Yeah, I agree with you actually. The cost also is another factor as well. So, for us also, let's say I also feel like I can develop everything. No, I can't. Because we have limited only the time which you're going to take. By the time you develop it, let's say for 12 months or 14 months, the thing is already out of the market. True actually. So let's focus on where we are strong. So we need to know where our strengths are and where our weakness. So weakness, I'll put this way, we should collaborate to make it a strength. That's the right way to do it. And where you're strong, you take hold of it. Maybe, for example, customer base is your strength. Take hold of it.
I think we have overwhelmed with good questions and answers. So maybe we have just last final questions. I think I saw someone there trying to.
I'm a developer from OPDC and I have a question for Mr. Lee. So, from what I understand just now, the API security is a SaaS from FI, is it? Then may I know during DDoS attack, how does load balance handle and will it delay the API call from client side?
Great questions, yeah. So as a SaaS provider of API security, we need to make sure that we are, DDoS ready ourselves, right? That we are not going to be overwhelmed by attacks. So we also provide that DDoS service to protect our customers that are sitting behind us. Yeah. So we have that very large capacity to take care of DDoS protection. In fact, we offer that as a service to protect our customers today. Obviously, we use that service to protect our own API security service, yeah, in addition to providing the DDoS protection for our customers. So what some of our customers are doing is this, setting up a DMZ. A DMZ is basically your own kind of security layer before it gets into your servers, right, your application. Usually, if you're on-prem, you set up DMZ on-prem. You have an AWS, you set up a landing zone, right? That's where you do all the checks before it gets to your applications. Setting up that infrastructure can be pretty expensive. You think about buying a firewall, the WAF, all the pieces, DLP, and so on. It can be pretty expensive. And what SaaS is capable of providing now is the ability for you to save cost on that and outsource that DMZ, make that DMZ part of the SaaS. So your infrastructure doesn't even have an IP address. When I say it doesn't even have IP, what I mean is it doesn't even have a public IP. When you don't have a public IP, nobody can attack you. Because you don't have presence in the internet. Your presence in the internet is now through a SaaS provider like F5 fronting you, right? So that means your DMZ has now just been outsourced to a provider that's in the business of providing you security. DDoS, API security, the likes, WAF, and so on, right? Bot protection. So there's a cost savings element to it because you don't have to do the traditional way of setting it up. So that cost, time to market, the know-how of operating that infrastructure of DMZ, you outsource it out. It's I think a good way to safer, cheaper, and what's the other third one? Faster. Yeah, there's three elements in any startup, right? Yeah, why not? Hopefully that addresses the question.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Well, maybe I have a question for Mr. Lokesh. So, what strategy would you suggest for managing risk associations with digital transactions, including the fraud and cybersecurity threats? And furthermore, is there any steps that we can take to prepare for future trends in digital remittance services?
I can see three questions over there. Okay. So let's talk about it from the digital or the transactions point of view. So when we do a design, we basically, as I said, like as mentioned in the previous slide also, end of the day we're talking about all APIs. Because it's just a front end, which actually is communicating to your backend servers using API to fetch the data, to process the data, to basically do the presentation of the so-called the data as well. So in that case, keep it very difficult to say, keep it flexible, because of course we also know that every time the change keep on coming, we have to go back again to the API and add on more fields. But I think so over here the experience is the one which play a bigger role. What we have seen is like, because when you start working on it, with the team members, when they get experience, so they already know, oh fine, when we designed the API last time, this is a new request which came in, okay? And then from there we start designing the new APIs, keeping in mind those experiences what we have in the past, to make sure it's more flexible, from the so-called the processing point of view. From the security point of view, the authorization is the must. We normally have to make sure that any API which is being developed, the authorization comes first. And last but not the least is when we do any development, we also do our internal pen test kind of thing, where we have subscribed to a so-called tool. Wherever we develop it, we just go through it whether everything is working fine or not. Because that is very important, because end of the day, like we release the so-called API to our clients, and if it is not secure, if tomorrow it gets breached, of course it's in their environment and all, but we are also responsible for it. So we need to make sure that before we release it, we do our own internal test using this third-party tools, which anyways these days is not that crazy expensive for doing a pen test kind of tool only from the API point of view. But it may not be end-to-end, it's just to see from development point of view whether any SQL injection and all those things are happening within the particular API. So that's how basically we are trying to take care of both the parts. One is on the flexibility from the API point of view, second is on the cybersecurity point of view. The third part, is there
Any steps for our future trends?
Steps for future trends. So I think so that it's same thing. There is no single solution for all the clients or for all the scenarios. It's all you have to go step by step. Where actually when you come to the business space, you basically need to work closely with the stakeholders. So stakeholders play a very big role. It could be marketing, it could be operations, it could be with the clients as well. So before you start building a business case or this one, this needs to be validated. That's one of the most important steps. Then only it should go into the so-called pre-development stage, where actually you should define what kind of APIs you want to have, what kind of security you're going to have, and what kind of checkpoints from the fraud management point of view, and what kind of, let's say, whether it's a risk-based approach, whether it's a KYC, whether it's flagging of transaction, all those things that will be taken care of. So all this will be taken care of when you're working with a team that actually is comprising of the stakeholders coming from the business, which is from marketing, maybe from operations, and not to forget compliance. These three are the most important ones. Normally what happened is, I think just now Vincent was mentioning, right? We are all under pressure. Sometimes the client says, no, I want to get this live by next tomorrow, because they are so answerable to their own internal stakeholder. So what happened is, during this rush, I can call it, in this race, sometimes we miss out this component. So that's very important, to make sure that getting the stakeholders as part of the whole journey, and take the ownership of it. Because right now what is happening is, when any new API comes, just give it to developer like a developer. And he will develop the way he wants to develop. And then yes, from the front end point of view, all working fine, smooth it out. But nobody knows what's happening in the back. So that's why it's very important to get the stakeholders, put the business case, and then again what kind of validation and what kind of compliance is required, and then only go to development. We should not do this after we have developed and we go into testing, and then we start looking into, hey, why this is not working, why it's supposed to be like this. So these are steps I can say from myself.
Okay, you, Mr. Lukesh. Can I have the last questions?
You mentioned about mitigating DDoS attacks and lowering the CPU cost, right? I'd like to ask are there any solutions that can also differentiate between real traffic and bot traffic?
Yes, most definitely. So rate limiting is one quick way to make sure that your API is not abused, overly abused. It could be you're doing some marketing and then suddenly there's a surge in number of calls coming in. But the last thing you want is to have a bot that's locking up your infrastructure. These days, they've been attending concerts like Melinda does to Coldplay and Tiffany, not Tiffany, Taylor Swift, sorry. You can never get tickets, right? Why is that? The API calls to buy the ticket is always locked up by someone else. And who's the someone else locking it? It's the bots. Right? So you can never make it fair, democratizing it so that everybody has a fair chance of buying their ticket. So you need to be able to differentiate between a human and a bot, a scripted machine that's making API calls. So, and there are ways to do so today, and we offer that as a service as well to differentiate. And quite often, the solution out there today is like, I'm sure you've seen capture. All of you would experience capture. And how many of you like capture? Nobody loves capture because it's so difficult, right? Even for a human to pass that capture. And we know when you put up a capture, it's creating friction for your customers, and they hate it. So, but the funny thing is this: the attackers who are backed up by AI, machine learning, these things are so powerful, and it's very easy for them to overcome capture. Now, the whole purpose of capture is to prevent machines, right, from coming in. But the fact is, the machine can interpret the capture much faster than a human can today. So you're creating friction for no reason by pushing a capture. So the correct way of doing things would be like, how do you detect whether there's a human or a machine bot that's doing it? And that intelligence can be collected from a browser, from a mobile phone. It is possible, and we've proven this, and that's why it is possible to be very accurate, 1 or 0, whether it's a human or a machine. Having said that, I must add also, once you filter out the machines, right, typically you'll find that 60-70% of traffic disappear because you just filtered out all the bots, right? And that means cost savings again on your servers, right? Because now you don't have to buy as much AWS compute. But here comes the next thing. How do you detect that? And this is the part where I think the more the banks are investing in this kind of technology to prevent AML or the likes of that. Probably for low value transaction, it may not be as much. But definitely in a high value transaction, you do need to think about fraud for humans that have bad behaviors that you need to be able to detect. So, but both of these are just as important, and both of these technologies from FI, they're available to address that.
Thank you, Mr. Lim. Thank you, Mr. Lukesh. This is the end of our OPDC 2024. So